All right. Well, welcome to another Modern Agent Blueprint. Today we have Chanel on, and we are so excited because she's going to be talking about dopamine to discipline. And I read this description, and I was actually reading it to a couple of my agents on the team. We were kind of just spitballing some stuff yesterday, and I was like, "Oh, you guys got to get on." And I started reading it, and that was the first time I actually read the description. I was like, "Oh, this sounds really good." So I was super excited. So I want to hand it over to you. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to Brooke for getting you on here. And I'm excited to see you. Are you going to be at EXPCon in Miami?
So, friends, not to start off in this way, but I left EXP about a week
Oh my
ago.
gosh. I had no
Yes,
idea.
I left EXP. I have nothing but the utmost respect for EXP. A lot of my friends, very, very close friends, are with EXP. So I'm having a little FOMO for Miami Beach. I mean, it is in Sobe, right? So you're going to love Sobe no matter what. And just make sure to hug my buddies and give them my best for sure.
Absolutely. Well,
Yeah.
why don't we go ahead and get started? Because I'm super excited to have you on. If you want to do like a little intro to who you are and where you came from and how you got here,
Ah,
we love that.
awesome. And then I will just flip on over to the presentation when that time
Sure.
comes. So that'll be perfect. So my
Perfect.
name is Chanel Hart Dupree. I am out of Chapel Hill, North Carolina. I've had my license for 10 years now. This will let you in, Miss Jackie. And I really, really have evolved a lot in my real estate journey. I would say especially over the last 6 years. So the last 6 years were huge for me. I went from Caldwell Banker to a very small boutique agency to my first cloud-based brokerage and then on to my next cloud-based brokerage. And so I think that we've seen a huge shift in our industry overall. I always say there's pre-COVID and post-COVID. And now we're saying pre-COVID, post-COVID, prior to August 17th, after August 17th, right? So there's all these shifts and changes in our industry. But I realized over the last 6 years, and especially with pre and post COVID, that I was just running myself into the ground. I was going insane. So when a lot of people were at home, a lot of people were having quality time with their partners, with themselves, with their children. I feel in the real estate industry, we probably worked more than almost anybody else outside of, first responders. Every single day, when I tell you 365 days a year, I was working and that didn't stop. And I kept saying to myself, this is just going to be 1 month, right? That was in March in 21. Oh, maybe two. Well, I'm sure by Christmas this will be gone. And then we went into 22, right? And then we went into 23. And I know a lot of us have really suffered PTSD. And so it has taken me to really stop and sit back and unwind everything that was completely wound up. And one of them was that I put myself last. And not only did I put myself last, but I compromised absolutely everything along the way. And I talk about this a lot, but I have 3 beautiful boys. And when I tell you I missed my baby going from 7 to 10, I missed my middle from going to 10 to 13, and I missed my oldest from going to 18 to 21. And when I tell you I was not present for 3 years, I wasn't. And so I can never, ever, ever get that time back, ever. And so what we're going to talk about today, I'm going to go ahead and can everybody see that on the screen?
No.
Okay, great. Awesome. Let me share.
While you're doing that, you are so right though about like the time. I mean, I feel like that all the time. It's like my daughter's a senior and I have this like dread of what I've missed over the last few years. So I 100% understand where you're coming from.
It breaks my heart, but there's nothing I can do about it. I cannot take that time back at all. All I can do is make very conscious decisions for my present and for my future. So it looks very different than what my past looked like. And so I think that a lot of us still haven't taken the time to unwind, and we haven't taken the time to really analyze what we put ourselves through over the last 3 years. My bank account was full. There's no question about that. But then what did I compromise in order to have all that money? We're servants at heart, right? We literally just want to serve. Most realtors in the industry just want to help and want to serve. We had more opportunity to serve and help during COVID than we did any other time. And so, I'm just really trying to look at how I can make better decisions. So I will tell you that today I'm going to be talking about different Ds, especially 3 of them, and how transitioning from the dopamine to the discipline It'll not only transform your business as it did mine, but it's really going to transform your life. So I always like to start a little bit about who I am because I haven't met a lot of you. And so this is going to be so much fun. So I am a small town girl. I am literally from a town of less than 5,000 people. And it was just a wonderful, wonderful place to grow up. My father still practices as an attorney at 80 years old. My mom is a nurse who is retired. And I loved growing up in Oklahoma. I went to University of Oklahoma and then I transferred to Carolina. So I'm part Boomer Sooner and part Tar Heel. But, you know, I own my own brokerage in Chapel Hill, Pittsburgh. And I went from, you know, just grinding to being named one of the top 1% of agents nationwide by Real Trends. And let me tell you what that cost me, though, is what I'm really here to talk about. So I graduated in high school in the top 25% of my class. And I say that laughing because I had 107 people in my classroom. 107. So I'm not top 1%, not top 5, not top 10, top 25%. And that might be stretching it. And I say that because not all of us are born achievers. Not all of us find our cadence and figure out how to become the very best of who we are in high school or right after. I'm what we like to call a late bloomer. So I always laugh. They're like, oh, you know, you must have been valedictorian. I'm like, listen, I don't even think I was top 25% of my class. So don't allow your past and your accomplishment or lack thereof, or what people deem to be accomplishment, to really go ahead and determine who you are. I have a huge fear of sharks. Huge. It's my biggest fear in life. So I decided about 10 years ago to get PADI, PADI certified. And the reason and purpose for that was that I wanted to really deal with my fear straight on and figure out what it looked like. And I'm going to talk to you all later about a story that, of course, you ask for something and you get it. But I also had a great time. I love going to Brazil. I love to base jump off of mountains in Brazil. So you can see that there's a cadence of natural dopamine hits. So I was very naturally drawn to the real estate industry and everything that it did. But more so, I'm a mom, I'm a wife, I am a daughter, I'm a sister, I'm a friend, and I'm a realtor. And I find that a lot of us wear many, many, many hats. And it can just drive us nuts. So before I was a realtor, I was an actor. And I wasn't in the theater. I was what you call a commercial actor. So I did a lot of commercials. So I did Nature's Own Bread and Royal Caribbean and Coca-Cola. And I really, really enjoyed it. But I learned a couple of things with my time as an actor. And one of them is that I was a very rare oyster in Miami. That's where I was an actor. And I say that because I was not a 6-foot tall Eastern European model walking down the streets. I was a small town girl from Oklahoma, 5'6", not super skinny, but I was who I was. So I'd go to these auditions where I'd see these gorgeous 6-foot tall Eastern European, just drop dead gorgeous models, and I just didn't fit in. And I wasn't getting the jobs, and I was getting really frustrated with myself. And then I finally had to stop. And I had to say, wait a minute, you know, what is that saying? What is the one thing that's different than all the others? I was the person who was very different from everybody else in the room. So I called my agent and I said, Cindy, I don't want to go to these auditions anymore. It is really frustrating me. And I'm going up against the people who are just not in my same world. So I would love to start going to rooms that align more with who I am, because no matter what I do, what I eat, how I speak, I will never be 6 foot tall. I will never be that thin. I will never be from Eastern Europe. All these things are never going to align with who I am. And so that was scary for me because that's the only thing I knew, but I knew it wasn't working. And I kept hitting up against a wall and hitting up against a wall. And so finally I just stopped and I said, you know what, let's try a different room. Well, I'll tell you, that's when everything shifted for me in acting. When I decided to put myself in a room where all I had to be was myself. Because the more that you choose to be your authentic self, the more I think you create your natural confidence. The more that you become more of who you are, the more you can be yourself. And I will tell you, the camera does not lie, friends. So when you're in front of that camera and the casting director's behind, and then you have all these people lined up behind them, you have the client, you have the director of photography, you have the director, you have the assistant director. They can tell when you're comfortable and when you're not comfortable. It's so fun when I like to say you can throw it away. So have you ever gone into a listing where you're super, super anxious and super nervous, and then you start figuring out ways to move into your own? You become more confident about what you're doing and what you're saying. You know exactly what's going on in the market. You've sold in this neighborhood before, or you know exactly how to sell the house. The energy behind that is very different than when you're nervous, you're anxious. People just naturally pick up on that. So one of the things that I very naturally learned through acting is to number one, find your niche. You've got to find that place that you feel very comfortable and confident in. And then once you find that place, I want you to dive all in. I want you to 1000% dive into that space. So when new agents, they reach out to me a lot and they said, Chanel, how do you build your business? What do you do? And I said, well, I decided that I wasn't going to go everywhere in the triangle. So in Michigan, imagine if they're like, okay, so I want to see this home here, and then I want to go 50 miles south, and then I want to go 75 miles west, and then I want to go, I just want to see this whole entire area. And those agents will be like, yeah, sure, that sounds great. Yes, I'll spend 25 hours with you. And no, I know you haven't even been pre-approved and I don't know what you're really looking for, but it's my job to be your tour guide and give you the windshield tour and do this because you don't want to say no to the money. But when you allow fear to drive your decisions, then what happens? You compromise yourself. And we talked about this a little bit before, Nicole, is that when you say yes to something, you say no to something else. So when you say yes to a client, yes to an opportunity, you're saying no to so many other people who then will just naturally fall into your niche. So I'm in Chapel Hill, but I really am in Chatham County in Chapel Hill. In Chatham County, I do luxury properties over $1 million. Within those luxury properties, I kept going deeper and deeper and deeper into my niche. So that is the number one thing that I would recommend for all of you. If you haven't done this already, I know we have a lot of seasoned agents on this, is to find that niche that speaks to you. Because to give 110% to that small amount is much greater than giving 110% to 1,000 things, right? Like it's just not going to happen. Another thing is to really lean into who you are, not away from who you are. That was a big one for me because that meant I had to actually be confident with who I was. That meant I had to be at peace with who I was. The more I'm at peace with who I am, the more I can lean into who I am. And I can trust that the outcome is going to be as wonderful as that process that I had along the way. So it was really interesting to me. Another thing that I found out as an actor is that I had been trained. Do you all remember the Pavlov theory? So Pavlov theory was when the dogs heard the bell, they would start salivating because they were being fed. Well, what I realized with acting is that when my agent called me, it was a doorbell, ding dong, that I had set as her ringer. And for me, that meant when I heard that ding dong, it meant opportunity. It meant that I got an audition. I was put on hold for a job. I booked a job. It meant money. It meant security. It meant peace for me. It meant that I actually am doing something that works. So what was so interesting for me is that when it didn't matter if I was celebrating my father's 75th birthday, if I was in my son's recital, if I was in the middle of a football game, if I heard the ding dong, ding dong, ding dong, I would drop everything and I would leave and I would pick up the phone. No boundaries at all, nothing. I would literally do anything that I could do. And that was an issue because that meant that I was allowing something to drive my behavior. I was allowing something to drive every single thing else in my life, as opposed to really taking control of it and deciding what was most important to me. And you all should always hop on this call, by the way, before 11 o'clock, because that's where we get into the nitty gritty of conversations. And that's where things really get personal and get real. So we were having conversations before this started about, oh my gosh, Nicole said, I've had the very best year I've had in my life, but I'm wondering, some other things that are going on. Well, that happened to me too. I had the very best 3 years of my life in COVID. But again, I literally did not see my children, not for like a day or a week. There is a massive gap for 3 years that I have no idea what my children did. I'll go back to Ford, my husband, and I'll say, forever husband, tell me about this photo again. What was he doing? When did he learn this? Oh, Preston learned to ride a bike when? I mean, it breaks my heart. But it's because I allowed that Pavlov theory of getting the call, going on the showing, getting the call, going on the listing, and not setting up boundaries in what was most important to me. because it is incredible how we allow ourselves to be conditioned by others. Why don't we condition ourselves? Why don't we allow that to happen? So it was really tough to be in the acting world. It just was tough because my every day to day was driven by somebody else's decision. So if a client or a director or someone else decided that I was best for the job, I would book it. But if I looked too much like the ex-wife or the ex-girlfriend, or if I was too thin, if I wasn't thin enough, if I had curly hair, if I didn't, my hair wasn't straight, somebody else was determining my future. And that was very difficult. And at that time, I was a single parent. I had met my forever husband, but we weren't married. And so it was really, really tough. And so we decided to get married, which was amazing. And then we packed up, we moved to Chapel Hill to become a part of a much more stable industry called the real estate industry. And I always laugh at that because there's nothing stable about the real estate industry at all. But one of the very best things that came out of moving to Chapel Hill is that I met my very best friend. And so Bestie is a doctor of neuroscience, and she helps thousands and thousands of people through something called neurofeedback. And I don't know if you all have ever heard of neurofeedback, but it's phenomenal. So you may have heard a lot of athletes utilize this. Tony Robbins talks a lot about neurofeedback. Neurofeedback, as you'll see there, is a form of biofeedback that encourages the brain to develop healthier patterns of activity. So when I asked her what neurofeedback, that was her response to me. And I said, I don't understand. Like, it was way above my head. And she said, Chanel, I help people who are addicted in escaping reality. And I went, okay. And I said, I still don't understand. And she said, people want to escape reality on a day-to-day basis. So they turn to things in order to do that. And they replace it with something that helps them feel good, that helps them feel better. So they don't actually have to be there for reality day to day. And then I'll never forget, she looked at me, and we had known each other about 6 months. And she said, you could really, really benefit from neurofeedback. I'm like, well, I'm not addicted to anything. And she said, yeah, you are. She said, you're a real estate agent. You're absolutely addicted to dopamine hits. And I will never forget. I'm like, who? What? What are you talking about? I don't even know what dopamine hits are. So I really started diving into what dopamine hits are. And it's a type of neurotransmitter, and your body makes it, your nervous system uses it, and it sends these messages between your nerve cells. It makes you feel good. And there are a lot of very healthy dopamine hits. So when you go to the gym, you feel good, right? You just feel good. You leave, your serotonin spikes, you feel amazing. When you listen to music, you have one of your very special songs that you love, like that's a dopamine hit. When you go to a comedy show and somebody says something, man, that Nate Bargatze, he gets me every single time. I will literally go on Facebook and just watch little clips of him because he just makes me laugh. That is a natural dopamine hit. Going shopping. Have you ever heard, someone who goes and says, oh, I just bought this and oh, I just love it. Well, they love it because it makes them feel good, because it's a dopamine hit. Going into meditation is actually a very calming dopamine hit. There's a lot of different ways to do this, but I also realized that social media is a massive dopamine hit. So I will tell you that the platforms by which social media are created, they're real a-holes, by the way, if I can say this. They really are, because they took the science of dopamine, and that's how they created their social media platforms, because they know for a fact that it's addictive. They know when we pull up social media, we get our dopamine hits. And we have become so trained to go into social media on a regular basis. We have no idea how much of our time that we're giving away. So I will tell you all, if you take anything away from our time together today, I want you to be extremely mindful about how much time you're spending on social media. This one is huge. You can go into your phone if you have the courage to do so, and you can check how much time that you're spending every single day looking on social media. So I decided to do this. I'm like, I'm really curious. I can't be giving that much time away, right? I just check it, maybe in the morning, at a stoplight, when I have time in between appointments, at night before I go to bed. It can't be that much. Well, let me tell you, friends, how much it was. It was 2 hours a day. It was 14 hours a week. It was 56 hours a month. It was 692 hours a year. 692 hours a year. So I wasn't taking literally 2 hours in the morning and just sitting there in social media. 10 minutes here, 10 minutes there, 15 minutes here, another 15 minutes here. It was averaging out to be about 2 hours a day. That means that I gave away approximately 2.5 to 3 months of my life that I was giving away that I have no idea where it went. I have no idea. Looking at somebody else's life, that's what I did. Watching somebody else, doing something else. I was so not mindful about my time. And so I will tell you all, if anything, go in and set a timer. You can do that. You can actually, it was really tough for me. I actually put an amount of time I can be on Insta and on Facebook, and it was painful. When it's like, oh, time's up, stop, no more. And I'm like, what do you mean? And I would just naturally, you all probably want to pick up your phones right now and check social. She's like, she keeps saying phone, she keeps saying phone. I need to pick it up. I need to check what's going on, right? You're like, I got to do, oh, I'm on my phone right now. Oh, because you're addicted. You're addicted. So I'm telling you, be very mindful about your time. Have you ever heard agents or even yourself say, I just don't have enough time in the day. If I could just find more time. If I could just clone myself and have just one more or have this or have that. Well, I'll tell you where your time is. Your time is in social media right now. What could you do with another 692 hours a year? I'm telling you, you could probably transform your health. You could transform your relationships. You could put meaningful and mindful time with your partner and your family, with your friends, in your business. That's what you could do with it. So that was a big one for me. Then I started diving even deeper after Bestie blew my entire world up with dopamine. And I started looking at all the opportunity for dopamine hits in the real estate industry. Friends, do you know how many we have? Our entire industry. Getting a new client, reconnecting with an old client, showing a new home, getting an offer accepted, winning in multiple offers. And of course, it doesn't stop then, right? Then we get the due diligence request that is approved. Then we get the appraisal that's approved. Then, we go to closing, then it's recorded. Then we get paid. Then we get the review. Like it's just hit. It is constant. And what I realized that I was doing this, I was on this roller coaster, right? I was on this roller coaster of hit. Feels so good, right? When we actually get that listing, when we actually get that client under contract, when you don't think it's going to appraise and it gets appraised, when that money hits your account, when you get those stock rewards, all those things are hits. But tell me what happens if you don't get the listing? What happens if that multiple offer isn't accepted? What happens if the appraisal falls short? What happens if a client calls you and they're so upset that they never want to speak to you again? So what I realized is that my dopamine highs were super high, but my lows were devastating. My lows put me in a place where I didn't want to do anything for a day, for 2 days, for 3 days, because I'm human, number one. But what I realized is that I was dependent so much on those dopamine highs that when those lows hit and I didn't get the results, right? I'm already looking at the person I want to buy. I'm looking at the vacation we want to take. I'm looking at this, I'm looking at that. I put so much into the result that I forgot about the process and I forgot how to regulate the process. So I will tell you, be very mindful of how you're feeling. I'm not saying don't feel good during your dopamine highs, but be mindful when you don't get everything that you've lined up to receive, because that's where the regulation comes in. And you've talked to your friends in the industry who are like, I just had the absolute worst day of my life. What happened? I didn't get this. I didn't get that. They want to terminate the listing. They want to do this. And that's when you really need to look at the process overhaul, and you need to help them and help yourselves through that process, as opposed to constantly looking at the result. And we talked about this earlier too, during that special time, right before we start. And it is that, we're so volume driven and we're so transaction driven and we're so award driven because, again, we get acknowledgement from that. And when you get acknowledgement from that, that's a dopamine hit. Imagine if you were much more in tune with what you needed day to day to just create that natural dopamine in your life, and you weren't dependent on others to drive you with that dopamine. What would that look like in your business? So we talked about what happened during COVID, and it was huge because I was constant. Guys, are you kidding me? We got a phone call and I feel like 5 minutes later we were under contract. Like it was just like this all the time. But what happened is that I was literally compromising everything all the time just so I could get the result. And because of that, it was a crash and burn for me. It was an absolute crash and burn for me. And it's taken me now a solid Austin Chevron's on this call too, he'll know. It's taken me a solid 9 months to go from my 2x life to my 10x vision, but I had to hit that crash. So the one thing that I really want to share with you all during this call is that try to avoid the crash and stop where you are right now and take a very good look at yourself. Take a good look at your life. Take a good look at your health. Take a good look at where you are and where you want to be and where are you in that trajectory. Don't allow the crash and burn to happen in order for you to do a complete restart in your life. So it made me really, once I did my crash and burn, I realized that we're all very, very, very driven by desires, right? We're driven by those big dopamine hits. Desires your want. Desires are basic want to be happy, to feel worthy, to feel accepted, to have nicer things, to make money, to be acknowledged. Acknowledgement is my love language. I love acknowledgement more than anything, but I was turning to others to receive my acknowledgement, which meant that I feel, overperform all the time in order to receive the acknowledgement. It meant I would walk out of my son's piano recital. I would leave my father's birthday dinner. I would step out of my college football game, which I love so much, in order to get the dopamine hit to possibly get the acknowledgement. Those are things that I want you all to be very cognizant of. Our industry is very full of opportunities to fulfill our desire. It's unbelievable to me, right? Like we literally can get sucked down into a vortex. I just want to talk a little bit about how crazy it is, like our industry and how driven it is by desire. Because money, what does it drive? It drives behavior. So look at this, year to date, we have in my market, my average price point is about $789,000. Average price point in the Raleigh-Durham area is $485,000. Average price in North Carolina is about $382,000. So this is crazy to me because this means that at $23,686 compensation of about 3%, that means that we are getting compensated anywhere from $590 to up to $800 an hour. Are you kidding me? You talk about money driving behavior, that's going to drive people all day long. It's insane to me. But what I also realized is that devotion is something that a lot of us have, right? So we have our devotion. We have our why, man. It's your ride or die. It's your reason for breathing. It is literally the reason that we get up in the morning and what we go to bed with at night. That is our devotion. I will say that I would be very surprised if we find even one person who is not driven by some sort of devotion, because devotion is literally why you get out of bed in the morning. And if you're missing devotion, then that's a conversation that we can have one-on-one at another time. But devotion is there. Desire, everybody's driven by desire, your why to a certain extent. But the one thing that I really realized that we're really, really missing, we have the want, we have the why, but we don't have the how. We don't have the how. I feel like that's why Nikki and Nicole started all of this, was to help us with the how. It was to help us with the systems, with the regulation, with the support, because the real estate industry does not teach us the how. It dangles, right? It dangles the, woohoo, this is the want. And you have your natural why, but what it doesn't do is it doesn't say, by the way, we realize that you have a massive desire in the morning and you have a desire when you go to bed at night. And we realize the why because we just saw average, because North Carolina is a very average market. You can make anywhere from $600 to $800 an hour. We're not going to teach you how though. Okay, so we're just going to drop you into all of this and we're going to let you figure that out, which is then what happens. We don't understand the how at all. We drive into it and then all of a sudden we're on a roller coaster all the time. They just don't do it. So there's a massive missing gap in our industry right now. Massive. It's the how. We're like, I've got more desire than I know what to do with, right? And I definitely have my devotion, but I'm kind of missing the how. I'm not really, really clear about that. This is something that cracks me up as I look deeper and deeper into the real estate industry. Did you know that the hours of education required in North Carolina are 79 hours? 79 hours is base. What it takes for somebody, right, to actually receive a real estate license in the state of North Carolina. To become a cosmetologist, 1,500 hours. To become a barber, 1,528 hours. Now, I have not spoken to a barber in a while, but my guess is that they are not charging $600 to $800 an hour for a haircut. That's just my guess. Same for somebody who does my nails. She does not charge me that amount. So that is telling me that without a doubt, this is absolutely ridiculous for me. This is ridiculous because the entry threshold to enter into real estate is so low, but the income potential is so high. So who do you think is actually attracted to join the real estate industry? Everybody. Everybody. They're like, wait a minute, you're telling me that it's going to take about 79 hours, give or take, to enter into the real estate industry. And I can make anywhere from $600 to $800. Well, man, that's definitely my desires there. My devotion. Yeah, I got to pay my bills. I got to take care of things. I have no idea how, but that's okay. I'll figure it out. Oh, we've met those agents, haven't we? We've dealt with those agents. Those agents are super fun, super duper fun. And so what I realized though, is that discipline is our quiet superpower. Discipline is our how is our quiet superpower. And that in order to succeed, in order to really be the very best that you can be in this business, you can do okay with 2, but when you have all 3, my friends, that's when you start becoming the top 1%, not only in your town, not only in your state, but in the entire country. That's when things really start changing, because desire can get you a long way. But guess what? If desire drove everything in life, including success, I'd still be married to my first husband, because that wasn't enough. I needed so much more in my life. I needed so much more in my life with real estate, right? I needed the how, because the desire was there and I just didn't know what to do with it. And it's when I realized these dopamine hits of going up and down and up and down, there was no regulation, there was very little support, and I wasn't clear at all. You've got to define these 3 things: your desire, your devotion, and your discipline. And I highly recommend whomever's watching this, I need you to plug into this mastermind every single Tuesday at 11, or I need you to watch the recording, because Nicole and Nikki are bringing to you a platform of systems, a platform to better your business. They are helping you with your how every single week. And that's how you become better. So we're going to talk about this gorilla, because there is a gorilla in the room, and this is what it is. So before August 17th, everybody talked about this. Now we're way past August 17th, and our real estate industry is shifting every single day. But what I said is that you've got to lean into the NAR settlement. This is an opportunity for you to regulate your roller coaster. This is an opportunity for you to implement your discipline. This is your opportunity to define exactly what your unique value proposition is. As a buyer's agent, you can be extremely clear as to what you're offering and what it costs to utilize your services. Now, agents who are very, very uncomfortable with this is because they have no idea what their value is. Those of you, a lot of you did this even before. I'm really proud of you all for doing that. You were very clear. Very clear. In the state of North Carolina, we had to have a buyer agency in place before we actually drew up an offer for our client. So we were one of the, I think, 13 or 14 states who had this in place. But it blew my mind how many agents said, well, you know, just the other day I had this conversation with an agent. She said, Chanel, yeah, this client's flying in from New York and I'm taking them all over and I'm calling the listing agents to see what my compensation is. And I'm like, why are you calling the agents to see what your compensation is? You should already know what your compensation is. She said, what do you mean? And I said, because you should have already had that conversation with your buyer client who's flying from 4 states above us to come in. Does she understand what your time costs? No. And I said, okay, so if a seller is not offering compensation, does that mean that you're going to work for free? Well, no. I said, but you just told me that your buyer is not willing to pay your compensation. So you're going to be dependent on a seller to decide what your worth is. Are you serious? And so those are the conversations that we need to start having. This is an opportunity for you to become the expert in everything. This is your opportunity to choose to whom you want to work with. This is your opportunity to decide exactly what your hourly is and receive it. It is amazing. When you say yes to something, you say no to something else. When you say no to something, you're allowing for additional opportunity to arise. So we got even deeper into it. And I said, why have you not had this conversation yet? She said, because I'm afraid she doesn't want to pay it. And I said, which means what? She said, well, it means one of 2 things. Either I haven't really shared with her what my value is, or she just doesn't understand my worth and I just need to let her go. I said, you're absolutely right, because you are worth it. This is your value, but you need to be very clear and concise. And bless them, right? Bless. Go on. Go find somebody else who's going to work for free, because it's not going to be me. So as we're stepping into a post-August 17th world, I'm going to tell you right now that if you decide to really define what your high standards are, who your ideal clients are, and what your personal brand is, these three things right here will absolutely put you at the very, very top of your game. We're going to dive into high standards a little bit. So in February, let me go back. Actually, in September, I read a book by Benjamin Hardy called 10X is Easier Than 2X. And if you all have not read it, I highly recommend that you do it. But be prepared that you will never unsee or unread or not understand exactly what you just read. So when I read 10X is Easier Than 2X, my entire world shifted because I realized that I was doing a very good job giving about 40 to 50% to a multitude of different things. I was 2Xing it. By the way, I'm very good at 2X, but I wasn't great. So what Hardy says very simply is that if you decide to focus on the 20% and get rid of 80% in your life, and you give over 110% to that 20%, you will exponentially 10X those areas in your life. So what I was doing is I was giving a small amount to 100%, and it was exhausting. I had a huge team. I was saying yes to everything. I was not clear in my vision. I was not clear in what I wanted. I wasn't clear in my future. I was exhausted. So every single night, even though I was putting in 14 to 16 hours, I wasn't happy. I wasn't at peace. I didn't feel accomplished. I certainly didn't want to even acknowledge what I was doing. I was a mess. But guess what happens when you decide to live a 10X life is you got to get rid of 80% of what's in your life. So looking at your life right now, do you feel like you could live 80% in your life? And if you did, what would that 20% that you fully decided to focus on look like? If you gave 100% to that 20%, how different would your personal life be? How different would your business be? How different would your health be if you started to really implement these things? So planning is the first thing. I will tell you this was really tough for me because I want to fit everything in all the time. But I will tell you, high performance individuals plan not just their week out, they plan their month out. And if you get very, very good, you plan your entire year out in advance. Your entire year out in advance. Yes, you plan out your vacations, you plan out every single thing. Because if you're very clear and concise about your goals and what your vision is, it's easy to plug these things in a year in advance. If you're not, you're going to be looking at your calendar going, I don't even know what I'm doing tomorrow. I have no idea. Because I'm going to let other people decide what my calendar is and drive my schedule because I'm unclear. I'm just going to keep giving the percentage that I give to 100% and just hope something hits, right? Because I got a dopamine hit yesterday and I got one today. So it's enough for me to keep going. It's enough. I'm okay. You're not okay. I'm just going to tell you that. You're going to crash and burn eventually, and it's not going to be pretty. So the first thing I want you to do, please, is at least start planning a week in advance. I was doing it on Monday, but I realized that it actually stressed me out over the weekend to not do it in advance. So now I do it on Friday mornings. I'll look on Friday mornings. I'm not to the year yet. I'm about 3 months out is where I am. But I'll look on a Friday morning of what's coming on the week ahead. Do I need to reach out to somebody? Do I really need to clarify what this is? Is this worth my time? Do I need to spend more time on this? All those things are very, very, very important. Health optimization, my friends, if you follow me at all on Insta, you will see that this has been a game changer for me. I'm in week 3. And when I tell you, I completely transformed everything about my health. Because what I realized, and this is absolutely ridiculous, but I'm going to go ahead and say it, is that I was so exhausted at 3:30 in the afternoon, I stopped taking afternoon and evening meetings. I did not have the brain power and the physicality to do it anymore. The weekends for me were just exhausting. The thought of carrying on a conversation with my family at the dinner table, the thought of prepping a meal, I call it the third shift at home, right? There's the morning shift, there's the shift at work, and then there's the third shift at home. The thought of getting the food, prepping it, talking to the kids, making the lunches, getting everybody ready for bed, it was so overwhelming for me, I would shut down. And that's not healthy. Costco fed us for a solid year. I'm not even kidding you. And it was just putting it into the oven, starting it, and then going, right? I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but the idea of doing anything outside of that for me was completely overwhelming, and I shut it down. So I had to step into my health and see what was going on. And that meant getting 7 to 8 hours of sleep. It means that my vitamin regime is on top. It is amazing right now. I've added a lot of glucosamine and a lot of other vitamins to my body to help lower my inflammation, to help my brain start working in a different way, to help with my focus. My exercise now is through the roof because I have more energy. Because of that, my cortisol levels are going down. And for those ladies of a certain age, similar to myself, when you're like, listen, I hardly eat anything. I have a glass of wine here and there. I do like my carbs. I'm not going to avoid them. I cannot lose the weight. It is because your cortisol is through the roof. It's because your stress levels are so high. Your body is just trying so hard to keep up with your physicality. So that was a huge one. Hydration. It seems so simple, right? But we do not drink enough water. Start drinking at least half your weight in water every single day. I will tell you with protein, this was a big one for me. I eat the same number of grams of protein that I weigh every single day. That was a big one for me. I've had to supplement with protein powders and other things, but that is going to massively help your overall focus and help you stay regulated throughout the day. Nutrition, I just had to cut some things out, my friends. It doesn't mean forever, but it certainly means for right now. So I had to cut out a lot of our white breads, right? Our flours, had to cut out processed food. That was not easy. Had to cut out a lot of things, and it's okay because I see already how I'm not overwhelmed day to day with things like I was before. My cortisol levels are coming down. I can actually have conversations with my children at night and not be exhausted. I can get up in the morning and I'm not in a complete fog. All the things that were so overwhelming for me for so long. Now, mind you, while I am a top producing agent, but now I can do other things as well. Now I can really have very intimate relationships with friends that I've lost touch with. I take time to call my parents because I just assume they're going to live forever and they're not. These are things that now I make time for because I have the energy to do it. They're small things, but they shift the needle in my life day to day. Another one is emotional control. I really struggled with this one. You've got to be in charge of your emotions because anger and jealousy and frustration will rule you. It will rule you. Stay centered. Stay focused. Be reliable. When you say something, mean it. When you say you're going to do something, do it. Like these are very, very simple things that I feel like we've completely lost in our world. If you say something, just mean it. And if you say you're going to do something, do it. How many times has a realtor said that they're going to do something, another person across the table, and you have to remind them over and over and over again? If you tell your client that you're going to call them or you're going to do this, you're going to do that, I want you to actually do it. And the reason a lot of us have the best of intentions, right? We actually, when we say it, we mean it. That's not where we have issues. It's actually doing it, right? If you say you're going to do something, do it. Well, I can't, Chanel. I'm overwhelmed. I don't have enough time in the day. Oh, it's because you're spending a lot of it on social media and you're letting somebody else decide what your calendar is. That is one thing. Well, I just haven't gotten to it yet. Well, that's because you're not in control of your vision. You're not in control of what you're doing day to day. These are the little tiny things that are going to completely transform your business. Mental clarity. So I used to think journaling was super foo-foo. I'll be very honest with you, but then I realized that the only way that I could actually see what was going on with me day to day to day, week to week, month to month, year to year was by documenting it. So by documenting something in your journal, I want you to just brain dump. Sometimes we don't want to brain dump first thing in the morning. I will tell you the healthiest time for me to brain dump is before I go to bed at night. Take 10 minutes at night and I just need you to brain dump. I don't need the meditation music on and the om and the candles lit. I mean, if that serves you, awesome. If that works for you, great. But what I do want you to do is I just need you to release what happened that day, because a lot of us have had very difficult days, and not just days turn into weeks, turn into months, turns into years, right? And we just hold on to it and we don't realize how much we hold on to it. So I say that if you hold on to those things, what happens is that it goes down into the pit of your stomach and it's itty bitty. It's like a sunflower seed. It's like, it's fine. It's okay. It's fine. Do you know what fine means, by the way? Effed up, insecure, neurotic, and emotional, by the way. If you hear someone say, I'm fine, I need you to call your friend because they're not fine. But it goes and it's a sunflower seed. But what happens is over time, I feel the universe continues to put these things in front of you over and over and over again until you actually decide to release it and let it go. So the sunflower seed turns into a grape, turns into a plum, turns into an orange. It just gets getting bigger and bigger. And all of a sudden you're snapping at a person in your office, or you're snapping at your partner, or you're just really not in a good space. And you're like, I don't understand what's going on with me. Everything's just fine. Mm. Yeah, I know how fine it is. 10 minutes a night allows you to just let go and forgive yourself, friends. We're not perfect every day. We've got to forgive ourselves. Oh, I could have done this. Why didn't I do that? I could have, just let it go. Be graceful with yourself. Forgive yourself. Yeah, maybe it could have gone differently. Maybe I could have done this differently. I gave it my best. I gave it my best. I like to talk about the evil queen a lot too. That evil queen is a biatch. Yes, she is. I call the evil queen. She's like the one on my shoulder who's like, where are you going with that curly hair? Nobody goes out in public like that. Are you kidding me right now? Oh, you think you can get that listing? Do you really? Bless your sweet little heart. She is Southern and she's not very nice at all. And so I've had to learn to deal with the evil queen on a regular basis and really stand up for myself, because if not, the evil queen will become your voice, who determines your behavior and determines how you choose to move about your day. So 10 minutes, release, let it go, move on. That has a lot to do with that daily reset button, because I need you all. We're very good at criticizing ourselves. Have you ever noticed that? Very good. Very quick to criticize ourselves. Very quick. Well, of course we didn't get the offer because I didn't do this or because I didn't do that, and I didn't counsel my client right on this. And of course I didn't get the listing because of this, because of that. Wow, I got the listing appointment. That's amazing. Wow, I have a buyer who really believes in me. That's so great. I obviously found a house that really aligns with them. That's really good. I want you to celebrate yourself. I want you to find 3 things every single day. I want you to celebrate yourself. Celebrating ourselves takes less energy than criticizing ourselves. However, we choose to criticize before we choose to celebrate. Please, when you're dumping in 10 minutes, write 3 things that you're celebrating about yourself and take compliments for yourself from yourself and hold on to them. Ideal client is a really, really big one for me, because guess what? If we're marketing to everyone, we're marketing to no one. I'm going to say that again. When you're marketing to everyone, you're actually marketing to no one. So I want you to decide who you want to work with and who you enjoy working with. So I actually put I put a lot of work into my ideal client. I named my ideal client. I know exactly who she is. I know what her age is. I know what her background is. I know what languages she speaks. I know if she's married, if she's not married, if she has children, if she doesn't have children. I know exactly what price point she's looking for. I know everything about this person because I created my ideal client. When you create your ideal client of whom you really want to work with, I want you all to get as specific as possible. It's very easy to, well, I want to work with, buyers who want to buy it at least $5 million and, they're cash buyers and they want to close in 2 weeks and they find something they want immediately. Let's get very, very real, number one, and specific. I want you to go back to your niche. When we talked about your niche, I want you to align your niche also with your ideal client, right? So do you want to work with buyers or do you want to work with sellers? Do you want to work with in-state clients or out-of-state clients? Do you want to work with first-time buyers or sellers? Do you want to work with seasoned or do you want to work with investors? Do you want to dive into the luxury world or would you rather work in the world of condos? Do you want to work with younger people or do you want to work with people of a certain age? Do you want to work with people with different cultural backgrounds? Do you want to work with people who speak different languages? I want you to become very, very, very good friends with your ideal client that you've created. And if you have no idea what I'm saying, go ahead and try to write down as much as you can on this, dump it into chat. GPT, who probably knows you very well if you haven't done that, chat will become very clear with you and concise as to who your ideal client is. And I want you to read it and go, okay, well, chat, no, I don't really like that. Get very, very clear and concise about how your ideal client is. Because once you know who your ideal client is, you know exactly who you're marketing to. You know when you make a conscious decision to be on social media, what your message is and who you're talking to, whether it's to your buyers or to your sellers. What is that message? And it's going to align perfectly with all your messaging that you put out on social media. It's going to be mindful. It's going to be thoughtful. There's no more 2X in your life anymore, friends. This is 10X thought. This is becoming very, very clear and concise about what you want. Your brand. This is a very, very big one for me because your brand is your calling card. It's the first impression that people have of you. Your brand is everything. It establishes your credit. It establishes your recognition. Your brand is your story. Your brand is who you are. I want your brand to emulate your business from top to bottom, from inside to out. I want your ideal client to come to your brand and go, that's exactly who I want to work with. I want someone to go onto your social. I want someone to speak to you on the phone. I want someone to go to your website. I want someone to see your email signature. I want someone to see your brand and then meet you and go, yes, yes, you are exactly who I thought you would be. You are who I want to work with. Have you ever gotten an email or a DM from someone and says, I just really want to work with you, but I've never met you before, Sally? They're like, I don't need to. I can tell. I can tell by your messaging and by your branding that you're my people and I really want to work with you. I really want you to list my house. If you have not gotten those messages yet or emails, I need you to really hone in on your story, because nobody has a story like you have a story. Nobody has your story. I know this is kind of silly, but you are a snowflake. Have you ever heard that no one snowflake is like any other snowflake? Do you know that there's not one single person in this entire world who is like you? Not one single person. However, I feel like we're so much more confident trying to emulate other agents that we see. Have you ever seen this happen? You go on social or you see people in your market and you're like, I want to be exactly like this person. It doesn't mean that you can't take ideas from them, that you really want to emulate part of your business best practices, but nobody can emulate you, just like you should not try to emulate anybody, because you are your own story. I need you to embrace your own story. The more authentic you are to yourself, the more you come across that way to other people. So when they meet you or they see you on social, they feel like they've met you. Have you ever seen those people or seen them on social over and over again? And then you meet them in person, you're like, oh my gosh, I feel like I know you. I feel like I know you. But have you seen it the other way around too, where you watch somebody on social and you see their stories and you meet them, you're like, I have no idea who you are. You pull out your phone. Are you this? Yeah, you are the same. Wow. Because there is a massive disconnect in your brain. You're like, okay. So align with who you are. Be very confident in sharing your story, in building your brand. If I went and pulled up your brand right now, do you feel like it would really emulate who you are? And I will tell you one thing, when you're creating your brand, so you'll see over to the right, I have a lot of brands that my in-house people have done for other agents. And I will tell you that if number one, if you're creating it in Canva, you don't own it. Did you know that? And so those are certain things that I want you to think about when you're building your brand, when you've really honed in on your story, is that you can't trademark something that's been done in Canva. So I need you to work on building your brand, and especially your physical brand. I need that to be out of one of these international platforms so you can actually trademark it. Because could you imagine not being able to trademark who you are? That'd be crazy, right? Because there's only one of you. So you'll see here, there is a QR code to scan to really start building your brand. This is going to give you best practices as to what you can really do to start building your brand. If you have no idea what I'm talking about right now, I think for me, this is the first step in really becoming who you are with your authentic self, for sure. And going back to the dopamine hits and the discipline, for agents who are newer, or if you're really looking at 10xing your business, I will tell you the best way to do this is to be very true to who you are. So firstly, really align with your niche and that part of the business that makes sense to you, your ideal client whom you really want to work with, and then sharing your story and your brand that really shares who you are, because that is how you're going to be able to sustain a business that's not going to run you all over the place. We were talking earlier, if someone is in Michigan, they're like, hey, I want to see this house up here, and then I want to go 90 miles south, and then I want to go 75 miles west, and I want to go 50 miles east, but I just want to see all of them. Well, do you really want to work with somebody like that? Or do you want to say, guess what? I work within this 5 or 10 or 15 or 20 mile radius. I know every single house. I know every single neighborhood. I know the HOA managers. I know the golf clubs, the clubhouses. I know all the schools. I know the superintendent. I know every single thing. I know every restaurant. I know every shop owner. I know all the things. I am the expert in this area. Or I always say, do you want to be 10 feet deep, or do you want to be 10 feet wide and 1 foot deep? So try to be deeper in what you're doing. So I always like to wrap this up a little bit more about me. So yes, I'm top 1% of agents in the country. Yes, I've been Realtor of the Year. Yes, I've been on Real Producers. But what I didn't share with you all is that this all came at a massive cost. because I was not aligned with what was most important. And I allowed dopamine hits in my life to really drive what was going on. So because I needed those natural dopamine hits, as my bestie shared with me as a realtor, and I was constantly focused on the result and not on the process, I wasn't clear in my vision. It meant that I missed years of my children's life. It meant that I was not as connected with the love of my life. It meant that those are years with my parents that I will never get back. It's years with my friends I will never get back. It's just being mindful about my health. And I think that that's so important. So in order to really avoid the burnout, the frustration, the sadness, and the depression, my friends, I want you to not only focus on your desire and your devotion, but I really want you to focus on the discipline. Because when you focus more on the discipline, you're not so driven by the dopamine hits. Yes, they feel good. Yes, I love them when they happen. But when I have a day when I don't get that dopamine hit, when things do not go exactly how I want them to go, it doesn't drive my entire day. It doesn't put me in a hole of just sadness and not feeling good about myself and not being able to pick up and move on. The best gift you can give to yourself is that feeling of peace. It's that feeling of celebrating yourself and letting go, being very clear about your vision, whom you're choosing to spend your time with, whom you're choosing to really go and work with. Be very mindful about all these things. Talked about all this. So the more times that I really focus on my wants, right? So this is really important. When you focus on the money all the time, I'm not saying that focusing on financial results is a bad thing. I don't want you all to get that from this. But when you don't have discipline behind it, you're so driven by these dopamine hits of wanting more and having to get those hits all the time. So by implementing systems into your life, your health, your family, your business, by doing that, you will ultimately be able to have a much more regulated, sustainable life overall. So I love to share, these are the sayings of my life. These are my maxims. So if you all don't have maxims in your life, I highly recommend that you really think of them, because these are your mantras. These are things that drive you day in and day out. So number one, you're the architect of your life. Number two, when things go wrong, don't go with them. That's a choice. That's a very, very conscious choice. A big dream does not fit into a small life. And so I've had people ask me about the third one especially. So I kept myself in a small box for a very, very long time because I didn't think that I was worthy of a big life. I didn't think that I was enough. I didn't think that I could actually be rewarded or be good enough to do all the things that are in my life now. You have to allow yourself to dream. Once you put that intention behind really believing it, that's when things start aligning in your life. That's when people start coming into your life to help you where you want to be. That's when you can really open up your expansion and your vision and really create the life that you were meant to live. Follow me on Insta, please. I would love to connect with you all on a very personal level. That's really important to me. I have been dealing with dopamine and 10X now for quite a while. It has been a complete, not just business changer, but life changer for me, a life changer for me. And I thank you all for your time, and let's have some conversations.
That was so good. You're such a good speaker. Oh my goodness.
Sweet. Thank you. Thank you.
That was
Thank you.
really good.
And very relatable.
Nikki and I are currently sharing a client who wants to look in 100 different miles. Nikki and I are sharing a client. He came to me, wanted to be 50 miles radius, which then put him into Nikki's territory. So I referred her over there.
Yes.
And then he's wanted to expand even further. So Nikki and I have had this discussion about what we're going to do here. Hopefully we can just get him into a house quickly and we don't have to continue this. But when you said that, Nikki and I both started laughing. We both know the pain of that.
It's hard to say no to the money. However, when you start compromising so much, then like I said, there's another client who may be willing to purchase right in your backyard in a much shorter period of time. So, you always have to take each client as they come and make those decisions that are best for you and your business and your family. And now that I feel like you're very conscious of it now, then the decision you make, no matter what it is, you can feel very at peace with.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
Well,
Marissa-
and
Oh,
I
go
found
ahead.
myself personally that there are some clients that after you work with them for so long, it's like you dread having to meet with them again because it just feels like a waste of time. So I've been trying to be more conscious of that and then pass that on to like a team member that I know can give them more attention and be possibly more patient with them, to be a better fit.
I agree with that. I think that that's really important. So a lot of things I hear is, well, Chanel, I've already put so much time into this client. Like, I really want to see this through, so I'm rewarded at some point. And I said, well, you're rewarded financially, but what do you continue to compromise along the way to get there? So I think that is being very clear about, when you're very clear about what your health goals are and your optimization, then you're not willing to compromise those anymore. I'm very clear that I need a certain amount of hours of sleep. I'm very clear about what I'm going to eat. I'm very clear about when my exercise happens. And it does mean that sometimes that means I say no to things that I really love, but I'm just not willing to compromise on certain things in order to get that financial reward. And I will tell you to really believe in yourself, Nikki, and believe in the power of no as much as the power of yes. And just like you said, it's not a no, I'm not going to help you. It's I'm still going to make money on this, but I'm going to go ahead and pivot it over here where I know that they're going to be served properly. They're going to be taken care of. I am absolutely helping another agent and that client is being served. So I think you're very conscious of that, which I appreciate.
Thank you.
Marissa's got me trying to do our year calendar. I went and bought the calendar after she spoke last. I got my calendar. Although I was filling it out, Marissa, I should have texted you. I was filling it out and I was like, now what? Like, I got my dates on. Now what?
Austin, you're
Nicole, I'd
talking
like for you to
next week,
meet
right?
Austin Chevron.
Yes.
She needs some
Austin-
training. She needs some
Austin got
training.
me hooked on it, what, like 2-3 years ago? And now the amount of people that have seen my annual calendar, like when I've been on Zooms with them, they're like, what is that? I need that. I need to plan out that far. So I talked 2-3 weeks ago on Modern Agent and they had seen my calendar behind me. It wasn't even like really the highlight of our conversation. We talked time blocking and stuff in general, but we talked the annual calendar briefly and like almost everyone on the Zoom ordered it and the wet erase markers. I'm like, that's the other key. Make it fun is get some colorful fun markers. It makes it more fun. You can highlight out and then easily see like, when do I have my next fun thing planned? Because fun is purple or whatever, right? It's very visual. We're visual people as salespeople. And so, yeah, it was fun. So Nicole, I love that you, at least you got it up though. That's the first step. Get it up, fill it out with what you have, and then we can start being proactive.
Yeah, I love that you got it. That's amazing.
We'll get to it.
You need the training with it so you can do it. So every year when I fill it out, I record myself and then I just have people do it with me. Like, okay, here's what we're going to put in the calendar. And then we fill it out together. And that's the best way. And it seems crazy when you fill out a year in advance, but you already have half the stuff. Like you're already going to have birthdays and weddings and you just didn't think about the stuff. And next thing you know, you scheduled your closing when you had a wedding to go to out of town and you just didn't think that far ahead. And it's like, that could have been stopped.
Yeah, I do that a lot. I do live by my calendar though. So it fills up very quickly. So I love the idea of it. So I'm hoping to implement that a little bit more and get better about all that stuff.
We're
Along
already
with
looking into April for your event, so we're getting there.
I know. And I do think, saying, you were talking earlier about saying yes and saying no to things. I feel like for a long time, I said yes to everything I possibly could do.
Sure.
And I wasn't as busy in production. I mean, I was still very busy and consistent, but not to the point where, I could do a lot of the stuff, but then it just became a lot.
Mhm.
And it was hard. And so like Julie and I used to do a lot of like trainings with our larger team here, and that kind of fell to the wayside. We were trying to bring in some other people to help us with some of that stuff. And I feel like the more hands you can have doing some of these things and delegating things out is so helpful, because a lot of the weight was on Julie and I trying to figure out, okay, the night before, what are we going to talk about at this meeting? What are we going to do? Who are we going to have? It was like, oh my gosh, it was like so much. And then adding on top of that modern agent blueprint, and adding on top of that, all these other things, it was like my plate was overflowing. So I
Yes.
started just saying no to things, and it's helped a lot. But there's certain things that I think we all need connection, and we need certain things, and we want to have that stuff. Like Julie and I talked about starting back up and doing some more of these team meetings, but there's just so many things that we have to say no to. And I definitely want to say no to more things that help me get to those yeses, like spending the time with my friends and doing the things with my family and all that stuff. Because I mean, my best friend, I've barely seen her in months. And thank God she's sort of in the real estate industry, so I get to see her at events, but that's about it. So,
Right.
it's like, I need to have that time. I know Brooks on here, she's like, every Thursday is girls' night. We do it everything single Thursday. And I love that. Like, that's her non-negotiable. So I try to do as much as I can with that, but it is hard.
It is hard. I agree. But you're conscious about it. That's the first huge step toward it, right? And have you
Yeah.
ever said yes to something? Sometimes there are certain boards and things that I'm a part of, and I'm, go to my first meeting, I'm like, oh, for how long? Right? Did I just say yes to this? And so I'm much more before, same. Like I would literally say yes to everything. And then I realized that it was just taking up, because you'd look at it and you're like, well, I don't know, 2 or 3 hours once a month. It can't be that much. But then it is, because that is literally 2 or 3 hours, 12 months that you could be doing something else. And so
Yeah.
it's been very interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I recently got involved in our like YPN board, which
Yes.
is hilarious because it's supposed to be young professionals, but we're all older. So they changed the name to Your Professional Network,
I love it.
which I think is hilarious because there's like nobody young in this board of realtors. It's hilarious. Like there's only a handful. So
Young and heart, right?
yeah. So, I got involved in that and I do love it, but thankfully it's like one meeting a month. It's like 1 hour and then we just have events. And so I'm a part of it, but I don't really do anything with it. So it's a good for me because then it's like a networking thing and it's helped me meet a lot of agents in my area, but it is hard, like, doing that but that's also neglected my gym schedule because it overlaps, so it's like, it's this like balance of trying to figure out like, okay, maybe not balance, but like, what's more important, so I don't know if we'll continue it next year, but it's something to, it's just something like paying attention to all of these things. Like Nikki's on, she's the president. Are you still president, Nikki? President of
Yep.
the board of realtors in her area. And
Big job.
yeah, she's got a lot on her plate too.
Well,
Yep.
I think it goes back to exactly what you're saying, is to be very clear about what your core non-negotiables are. And I think a lot of us don't know because we are servers. We have a servant's heart and we just feel like we can do everything and please everyone, including ourselves, which we cannot, by the way, friends. I know that may be a surprise to some of you, but it's not going to happen. And so being very, very clear about what your non-negotiables are, and then that will in and of itself make a lot of decisions for you. And, there is some FOMO, right? But if you know this is a core non-negotiable, then who cares? You can go ahead and say no to it.
Love it. Well, thank you so much for being on today. You are such a good speaker. I really loved everything you said today. So hopefully we can have you back on again. And thank you, Brooke and Marissa, for helping to get Chanel on with us today. And we'll be back next week. Let me see who our speaker is next week. Oh, it's Austin Chevron.
Look at that.
He'll be on next week. And he had to hop off, but he'll be on next week. So that'll be great. So join us again next week where we're going to have Austin on, and we have a lot more exciting things coming your way. So thank you, everybody, and have an awesome day.
See ya.